The whisper on the edge of the universe. By 2842, humanity fancied itself the master of its corner of the galaxy. We had colonized hundreds of worlds, deciphered the languages of extinct civilizations, and mapped nebulae that were once thought to be divine visions. We had grown arrogant in our certainty that the universe, while vast, was ultimately logical, a collection of physical laws, mathematical constants, and astronomical phenomena. We thought we knew the rules of the game, and then we heard the whisper. It didn't come from a living world, a pulsar, or a quasar. The signal originated from the Chorus Alpha system, a dead kingdom where a lone white dwarf star had long ago breathed its last light, leaving behind nothing but a gravitational scar and an orbital graveyard of stone corpse planets. It was a place where not even automated probes were sent. There was nothing there but radiation, eternal cold, and a silence that had lasted for billions of years, but the signal was there. Faint, erratic, like a ghost in the quantum sensors. When analysts at the Shadow Observatory on Triton filtered out the noise, they heard something that made their blood run cold. It wasn't code, not a mathematical sequence, it was a rhythm. Like a heartbeat, impossibly slow, one beat every few hours, but unmistakably organic. The Alliance Systems High Command was in turmoil. This contradicted everything we knew. Life, especially on such a massive scale, could not exist in such conditions. After weeks of clandestine meetings, a decision was made: send in the best. The long-range exploratory vessel, Erebus 9, was recalled from its mission in the Orion Nebula and given a new, top-secret directive. Its mission: find the source of the heartbeat in the Chorus Alpha system, identify, study, and, if necessary, remain silent about it forever. Aboard the Erebus 9 were 5 souls, 5 of the finest specialists in their fields who had no idea they were flying not toward a discovery, but toward the end of understanding itself. They were flying into the embrace of the void. Erebus. The Erebus 9 wasn't just a ship. It was a hermetically sealed world, a tiny island of sanity hurtling through infinity. Its walls were steeped in the stories of 100 missions, its systems operating with the precision of a Swiss watch. But now, as it approached Chorus Alpha, even the ship's AI, Odysseus, seemed on edge. Captain Aris Thorne stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the holographic star chart. His face was carved from granite and patience he had 20 years of service behind him, dozens of first contacts, and the mission to Helios 7, a legendary failure that had cost him part of his crew and a piece of his soul. He was a skeptic, a pragmatist, a man who believed only what his sensors could confirm. But the heartbeat in a dead system unnerved him. It was wrong. Like a nail driven through the smooth glass of reality. Status, Kellen. His voice was calm, but held an undercurrent of steel. Lieutenant Kellen Kale Rostova, chief pilot and engineer, ran her fingers across a sensory panel. Her hands moved as if they were an extension of the ship itself. She felt every vibration, every flicker in the plasma inductors. Gravitational anomalies are spiking, Captain. Something massive is hiding in the white dwarf shadow. Our long-range scanners can't get a clear image. It's absorbing the scans, no reflection. Just a warp in space-time around it. Thoughts, Ilara? Thorne asked the woman at the science station, Dr. Alara Vance, xenolinguist and chief science officer, was the mission's intellectual heart. Her eyes burned with an unquenchable curiosity. For her, the unknown wasn't a threat, but a promise. It's not an object in the traditional sense, a res, it's an absence of an object. Imagine someone cut a hole in reality and we're seeing the seam. Whatever it is, it doesn't obey the known laws of baryonic matter. Suddenly, Yorick Maddox, the security chief, stormed onto the bridge. A giant of a man, his body a roadmap of scars from forgotten border wars. He trusted only his plasma rifle and his gut. And right now, his gut was screaming, "Captain, I was just running a check on the external cameras." You need to see this. He projected the image onto the main view screen. At first, there was nothing but the familiar black of space dusted with distant stars and the dim glow of the dead dwarf, but then they saw it. In the space between them and the star, there was a region with no stars. A perfect circular disk of absolute blackness that didn't reflect any light. It didn't block the stars like a planet. It erased them. That's impossible, whispered Lena Petrova, the youngest crew member, a brilliant astrogator on her first deep space mission. Her face was pale. No natural body can create an effect like that. At that exact moment, the heartbeat pulsed again through the comms. But this time it was different, stronger, and between the beats, they heard something else. A faint, staticky whisper like thousands of voices speaking at once. Odysseus, isolate and amplify that subharmonic signal, Alara commanded, her fingers flying across her console. The AI complied, the static filtered away. And from the speakers came a clean, cold, inhuman voice that spoke a single word. ... EREBUS ... A dead silence fell upon the bridge. Something in the dark knew their name. As they drew closer, they saw it. The gate, a colossal structure hanging in orbit around the dead star. It wasn't an arch or a portal in the conventional sense. It was too immense, obsidian-smooth, steely, standing parallel to each other, connected by nothing but the void between them. Their surfaces were featureless, showing no signs of technology. They simply were, defying gravity and common sense, and as the Erebus 9 entered its direct line of sight, the space between the steely began to glow. Not with a bright light of energy, but with a soft, milky, ethereal luminescence that seemed to suck in the surrounding light rather than emit it. It beckoned, a siren's call from the end of the universe. They were waiting for us. Lena breathed. It's your call, Captain, Kale said, her hands steady on the helm. We can turn back right now. Reese Thorne stared at the gate, and in his eyes was the eternal dilemma of the explorer, the risk of the unknown versus the agony of not knowing. He remembered the failure at Helios 7, where his caution had led to the deaths of two crew members. He would not make that mistake again this time. He would see it through. Full ahead, Kellen, take us through. Passing through the gate was unlike any FTL jump or wormhole transit. There was no acceleration, no disorientation. One moment, the Erebus 9 was in the Koiros Alpha system with its dead sun and ghost planets. The next, it was nowhere. Absolute nowhere. Outside the viewports, there was nothing. No stars, no nebulae, no distant galaxies. Just a perfect, velvety, and netting blackness. It wasn't merely the absence of light. It was an active, hungry darkness, so thick it felt like a physical substance. Status, Thorn barked, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden, total silence sensors are. They're blind, Kale answered, her face tense. They're reading absolute zero across all spectrums, no radiation, no particles, no gravity. It's like we've fallen out of the universe. Nave's systems can't get a lock. As far as they're concerned, we don't exist. Comms, dead, complete silence. Even the internal ship-to-ship link is full of static, Yorick reported, gripping his rifle. So hard his knuckles turned white. And then it began. Yorick was the first to hear it. A faint whisper at the very edge of his hearing, he heard a baby crying. The same cry that haunted his nightmares from the pacification of Cygnus X-1, a Black Ops mission no one on board knew about. He spun around, but no one was there. What was that? He growled. What was what? Aris asked. You didn't hear it, no one had. But a moment later, Lena Petrova flinched. She heard the voice of her mother, who had died 10 years ago, calling her name gently like she did when Lena was a child. She clapped her hands over her ears, her eyes welling with tears. This isn't real. It's sensory deprivation hallucinations. Elara tried to reason, but her own voice was trembling. She was hearing fragments of indecipherable languages, snippets, of knowledge the human mind was not built to comprehend. Symbols and formulae flashed before her inner eye, promising answers to everything at the cost of her sanity. The darkness outside was playing with them. It wasn't empty. It was a mirror for their souls. On the main view screen, Aris saw the face of Lieutenant Eva Ross, who had died on Helios 7 on his command. She stared at him with accusation, her lips soundlessly forming the words, "You could have saved us." He squeezed his eyes shut, but the image remained, seared onto the inside of his eyelids. Kale felt the ship itself changing beneath her hands. The console briefly became a tangle of pulsing veins, the helm cold and bony. She saw phantom cracks. Spiderweb across the walls, leaking darkness, even though the ship's integrity scanners showed everything was normal. The Erebus, her home, her fortress, was betraying her. The space was reacting to their fears, their memories. It was disassembling their minds, blending past, present, and potential futures into a single, nightmarish stream of consciousness. They heard echoes of their own thoughts thrown back at them from the dark, twisted and malicious. It's alive, Aris said suddenly, his voice raspy. Everyone looked at him. This isn't space. This isn't a void. It's a mind, a vast, unknowable consciousness, and we're inside it. It's not attacking us, it's single quotes as ... reading us. His words fell like a death sentence. They weren't explorers, they were books in a monster's library. Ours bled in 2 days or perhaps minutes. Time had lost all meaning. The crew was fracturing. Yorick began firing his rifle at shadows. Lena was locked in her cabin, sobbing uncontrollably. Elara was feverishly scrawling incomprehensible symbols onto a data pad, her eyes burning with a Terrifying mix of discovery and horror, only Reese and Kale held on, bound by discipline and the last shreds of their sanity. And then, just as hope was about to extinguish, something changed. Ahead, in the infinite dark, a point of light appeared. No, not light. A point of darkness. It didn't radiate. It seemed to consume the blackness around it. And it was growing. Taking us in, Kale rasped, not waiting for an order. Anything was better than this motionless agony dot as they approached. They realized it wasn't a star or an energy source. It was a structure. A colossal, impossible structure, suspended in the heart of the void. A cathedral dot. It was built from a stone as black as the darkness itself, yet its edges glowed with a cold, ghostly light. Its architecture was a fever dream, non-Euclidean, spires. Bent at impossible angles, arches led to nowhere, and windows seemed to look inward upon themselves. To look at it was to feel physical pain, as if the brain was struggling to process something it was never meant to see. The Erebus 9 came to a stop before the cathedral's massive gates, which began to swing open, slowly and silently, inviting them in, and they knew they had no choice. The void had brought them here. This was the end of their journey. Reese made the call. We're going in full-eve suits. Yurik, Lena, you stay on the ship. Lena, keep the engines hot. Yurik, if we're not back in 2 hours, you leave without us. That's an order. Yorick started to protest, but the captain's gaze silenced him. Thorn, Elara, and Kale cycled through the airlock. As the outer door opened, they braced for the vacuum, for the cold. But there was nothing, no sensation. The air wasn't ripped from their lungs, the cold didn't seep through. Their suits, they simply floated in nothingness, breathing their own recycled air. Using their suit thrusters, they crossed the space between the ship and the cathedral. The closer they got, the more unreal it felt. The walls of the cathedral seemed to be made not of stone, but of solidified silence. They flew inside. The interior was even more mind-bending than the outside. There was no floor or ceiling, only an infinite space filled with floating columns, stairways that led nowhere, and stained glass windows that depicted not saints, but entire star systems being born and dying. Its air, if it could be called that, was thick with whispers, billions. Trillions of voices, thoughts, and memories, all sounding at once, yet creating no chaos. It was a symphony of extinction. And then the walls came alive. The black stone began to shift, to flow, forming images. They saw winged beings from Silicon worlds singing songs to the stars. They saw a civilization of sentient oceans whose thoughts created tidal waves on their surfaces. They saw races of pure energy and races whose bodies were made of living metal. They saw their rise, their glory, and their end. Every civilization, upon reaching its apex, eventually found the gate and entered, suddenly, the space before them. Coalesced, they appeared, the keepers of the void. They were not bodies, but absences. Silhouettes woven from pure information, light, and shadow, constantly shifting form. They existed in 3 dimensions, and 4 and 5, and in others for which the human language had no words. To look at them was to see infinity, and the mind recoiled. Their voice was not a sound, but a feeling that bloomed directly in the Center of their consciousness, the feeling of a cold, eternal, all-knowing truth, you have entered the heart of the forgotten. You have come to the great library. Who are you? Aris thought, fighting to maintain his composure, we are memory. We are the final breath. When a civilization reaches the limit of its understanding, it finds us. It seeks to transcend its universe to find the answers. But there is only one way out. Alara, trembling with a mixture of terror and ecstasy, asked, You destroy. Them, destruction is to be forgotten. We are the opposite. We preserve. Not their worlds, not their bodies, their essence. Their songs, their dreams, their love, and their hate, everything they were. We add them to our symphony, plus. Kale felt her heart clench with an icy dread. Your collectors, a cosmic cemetery. A cemetery is where things end. Here, nothing ends. Here, everything continues forever. As pure memory, a billion years of human history flashed before Aris's eyes. He saw the first spark of fire, the first spoken word, the first flight into space. He saw war and peace, triumph and failure. He saw everything his species was, and he understood. It was their turn. You have reached your limit. Your science, your philosophy, it has led you here. Now you will become part of us. Your memory will be preserved, greater than no, Aris projected back. We're not ready. We're not finished yet. The keepers seemed to pause. The feeling in their minds shifted, curious. You are the first to resist. All others came willingly, seeing it as the ultimate honor to become eternal. Your attachment to your temporary, physical shells. It is primitive, yet strong. Very well. We offer you a choice we have offered no other. The cathedral walls flared with images. On one side, an eternal, peaceful existence as pure thought, merged with the minds of countless civilizations. On the other, their ship, the Erebus 9, and the path back to the warmth of the stars, to a life of pain, loss, but also love and hope. You may stay and join us. Or you may return, but if you choose to return, you may never speak of what you have seen. This truth is too large for your world. It would break it. You will take a vow of silence. And a piece of you will remain here forever as collateral. A reminder of your choice. Aris looked at Alara, then at Kale. He saw the same answer in their eyes. They were explorers, soldiers, engineers. They were human. And they wanted to live. We're going back, he said. The choice is made, but remember, once the void enters a mind, it never truly leaves. You will carry a splinter of it with you. That will be your burden. Go. The world dissolved. The next instant, they were back on the bridge of the Erebus in their command chairs. The airlock was sealed. Yorick and Lena were staring at them, baffled. For them, only seconds had passed, the gates of the cathedral closed, and the ship began to move back toward the exit from that Nong space. The return journey through the gate was as seamless as the entry. One moment they were in absolute darkness, the next they were hanging in orbit around the dead white dwarf again. The scanners showed normal space. The gate was gone as if it had never been. The heartbeat signal was silent. A heavy, oppressive silence filled the bridge. 5 people had just returned from another universe, but a chasm now lay between them. They looked at each other, but saw only the reflection of horror in their own eyes. What do we tell Command? Lena was the first to speak, her voice shaking. Reese Thorne turned to the viewport. We tell them the truth, a version of it. We found the anomaly, but it was an unstable gravitational pocket. It collapsed as we approached. The signal was a residual effect. Mission failed. Object lost. There's nothing more to find here. It was the perfect lie, unverifiable. They returned as heroes who had survived a dangerous encounter. They were debriefed, scanned, analyzed, but they stuck to their story. Their vow of silence was stronger than any metal, but the keepers had not lied. A piece of their souls had been left behind, and a piece of the void had come back with them. It started slowly. Alara Vance, the brilliant scientist, lost all interest in xenolinguistics. All known languages now seemed primitive, flat. The symphony of a billion minds played in her head, and she desperately tried to transcribe its echoes. She resigned her commission and became a recluse, her apartment walls slowly filling with incomprehensible symbols with equations that broke the laws of physics. She died 2 years later of self-neglect, surrounded by her mad writings. Her last journal entry contained a single sentence: "The silence is so loud." Yorick Maddox, the man of action, became a paranoid wreck. He couldn't sleep. He saw the keepers. In every shadow, he heard the whispers of non-existent voices. He saw non-Euclidean angles in the corners of ordinary rooms. He claimed the void was leaking into their world through cracks in reality. One day, he barricaded himself in his apartment and opened fire on security forces, screaming that they were coming for the rest. He was shot and killed as a dangerous madman. Lena Petrova, the young and gifted navigator who loved the stars more than life itself, never went to space again. When she looked at the night sky, she no longer saw the light of distant worlds, but the infinite blackness between them. She saw the endless void waiting to swallow everything. She lived to an old age as an archivist in a subterranean complex. On Luna, never once looking up at the sky, Kellen Rostova, who once felt her ship as an extension of her own body, lost that connection. Technology became alien and hostile to her. She felt the cold, indifferent intelligence of the void within it. She left the fleet and settled in a low-tech agrarian colony where she worked with her hands for the rest of her days, afraid of even the simplest machine, and Captain Reese Thorne. He suffered the most because he alone understood the full depth of their mistake. He realized the choice they were given wasn't an act of mercy. It was the cruelest experiment. The keepers hadn't just released them, they had infected them. They had planted a seed, the seed of the knowledge of the void. Every night, in his dreams, he returned to the Black Cathedral. He stood before the keepers and they showed him the future. They showed him how the idea of them, like a virus, would spread through humanity, how his lie would breed suspicion, how sooner or later curiosity would win and humanity would send another ship, and then another. They didn't take civilizations by force, they simply put a door in their path and waited for them to open it themselves. Reese Thorne lived a long life, rising to the rank of admiral. He used his influence to classify the Koiros system, declaring it a quarantine's own due to an unknown spatial hazard. He became the warden at the gate to a hell no one else knew existed. On the last day of his life, lying in a hospital bed, he dictated a final, encrypted report, timed to be opened only 100 years after his death. Epilogue, the Akun 100. Years later, humanity was more powerful than ever. Old secrets were being unearthed. The final report of Admiral Thorne was DCRYPTED. It contained nothing about keepers or a cathedral. It contained only one phrase, repeated 1,000 times: do not seek answers in the darkness between the stars, for the darkness will answer you, and its answer is silence. But it was too late. The legend of the Erebus 9's secret mission and the strange fate of its crew had festered, sparking curiosity. The words of a dying admiral were not seen as a warning, but as a challenge, and on that very day, a new, state-of-the-art exploratory fleet, codenamed Prometheus, departed for the Koiros Alpha system. They were flying to find the truth, not knowing that their fate was already written into the symphony that played in the heart of the void, and somewhere out there, in the starless dark, the black cathedral waited. Its great gates were slowly swinging open, preparing to welcome new voices to its eternal choir. The void always wins. Not with force, but with patience. It simply waits.